Welcome to Remember Me by Intervivos, the show about living life to its fullest, leaving a legacy, and deciding how you will be remembered. And now, your humble team of expert planners taking the legal world by storm.
Welcome to Remember Me. This is the show where we talk about leaving a legacy, how you'll be remembered, and planning your life. We're here with the Mayor of Provo City in Utah, Michelle Kaufusi, and thank you so much for letting us come down and sitting down and just get to know you a little bit. We want to get to know a little bit about your legacy and your background, just your story. And so just start by telling us a little bit about, as you were growing up. I know that you were raised here locally. What was that like? And, just tell us a little bit about how you got started.
So I completely pride myself on being homegrown in Provo. I was born right here at Utah Valley Hospital, and I was the sixth of 7 children, and born into a really small home just right here on Center Street with, it was 2.5 bedrooms, and there were 6 kids, 3 boys, 3 girls, 4 girls, 2 boys at the time. And we pushed 2 twin beds together, and me and my 3 sisters slept in the twin beds, and then my 2 brothers and my mom and dad. And then after that, my father wasn't a member of the dominant religion. And so I think he was just kind of done with Provo and left, and he wasn't raised here. So it was a trick for him. And so my mother was alone and had just had her 7th baby. And we were not the typical family in Provo. I felt like as a child growing up that everyone's dad was either a doctor or a BYU professor. And every family was perfect. Right. So it was really a unique situation to be raised in Provo with a divorced mother and a large family.
Yeah, so being raised with 6 siblings, that's a challenge, obviously, for your mom. But what are some of the memories that you have of having a large family with a single mother?
Yeah, well, it was really unique. She would work the graveyard shift at the hospital. She was a nurse, and she would do the shift 7 to 7. So at 7 p.m. she would leave, and my older siblings were in charge, and then she'd pull in at 7 a.m. and just see us walking out the door to get to school, and it was rough. It was really hard on her, and it was. So
she would try to get sleep while you were at school?
Exactly, yeah.
Wow.
Everybody had to contribute in our family. By age 12, we were all working. I was cleaning my neighbors' bathrooms and babysitting and tutoring with reading, and everyone did something to contribute, and we knew. And it was interesting because none of us would ever ask my mom for money or anything because we knew how she was barely hanging on. So we all had to contribute from the time we were young. If I wanted school clothes, I knew I had to buy them. If I wanted to participate in an extracurricular activity, I knew I had to work and earn the money for it. An interesting tidbit is I went to Wasatch Elementary and then to Fair and Dixon middle schools, and I graduated from Provo High, but now that I'm out of the system, I was the kid that was on the free and reduced lunch. I was the kid that had to say a number and say free before the number. Now they would never allow you to do that. But it's really interesting when I was right in the thick of it, I didn't notice it as much, but now being out of it, I look back and think that is just crazy, but we really were struggling.
It was just reality.
Yeah, for us it really was.
What do you think that you learned of having to work so early on and having to help provide for yourself and also for your siblings? What do you think are some of the things that really stuck with you from that?
Well, all my siblings are all really hard workers and go-getters and competitive and kind of overachievers and almost to a fault. But I think it's because we struggled and we saw how hard life can be, even in Provo, where everything looks like it's perfect, like everyone's dad is a professor or a doctor. And we learned hard work, and we learned to go without. We went without a lot. And the good thing was we were surrounded by such great people in Provo. They never made us feel less. And, adults, I remember thinking, why are dads here at like Saturday events and Sunday events? And it just really taught me a lot. We had great support from our teachers and neighbors, and my mom had great support. She died when I was in my 20s.
I heard that, yeah.
Yeah, and we kind of just, now the siblings, we just feel like it's probably because she just worked herself to death, and we probably just stressed her to death with
Right.
all of us kids. So, yeah.
Do you think most communities are like that? That, you know, someone in that situation would have gotten as much support in another community?
You know, I've thought about that a couple times, thinking, had we been born, I don't know, in another city or just in the neighboring city, would our experience have been different? And I really think it probably would have, because Provo's so, we're the #1 city for volunteerism. We tend to take care of those around us. We're really good at doing wraparound services for others. Provo has that unique piece to it. And I think had we been raised somewhere else, we probably wouldn't have had all the support and just all the help that we were able to get. It was a game changer for all of us.
Do you think that's one of the things that's kept you here?
I think, it was great. I wanted to go to Brigham Young University. I remember I went on a field trip there when I was at Provo High, and I remember thinking, this place is so clean, and the flowers are so pretty, and everything's just looks so shiny and sparkly up on campus. And I came back and I went and met with my counselor and said, what do I need to do to get across the street? And she said, okay, this is what you need to do. And so I really worked really hard and was able to land an academic scholarship and go across the street. And
Do you remember how old you were at the time?
well, when I asked, I think I was, so we have our freshmen in high school. So I must have been just a 9th grader.
A 9th grader.
Yeah.
That's great. So
Just
from
young.
then on, that
Yeah,
was kind of the vision.
That was the goal, was to get, and my girlfriends and used to tease me, don't you know, everyone does a senior trip, and I was like, what? No, we don't do senior trips in our family. But they just couldn't believe that I was so anxious to go to Brigham Young University that I wanted to start summer semester.
Right.
Because in their minds, they all thought summer off, summer before college, and I was like, no, I can't wait to get to that university. So I started summer semester. I think I had like 3 weeks off.
Wow.
And went right over to college.
And then you mentioned your mom passing.
Yes.
How long after that, when you got into college, was
So
that?
I got into college, and so I was 19, because I'm kind of on the older end from my class, and she passed away when I was 29 or 30. So only
About 10 years
yeah,
after.
Yeah. She saw us get there and work, and which made her really happy. But she, my mom wasn't the nicest mom in town. I think I could say that honestly. She had the biggest heart, but to raise 7 kids, you've got to be all
A little tough.
positions. You have to be the disciplinarian, you have to be the nurturer, you have to be all those things rolled into one. So she would constantly throw things at me like, don't ever think you can depend on a man. You have to know that you have to be able to take care of yourself if something happens to your husband, and don't go through this life thinking it's going to be easy. She was good to really give us a shock and dose of reality, which has paid off.
So in today's society, there's a lot of families that are in that situation.
Yeah.
Would you say that is an issue, that a lot of times, women in particular are not prepared if something happens to their loved one?
I 100% believe that, because a lot of it is, it's hard to go into debt or to work. I worked 2 jobs to pay for BYU because my scholarship was only 1 year. And I sorted cherries through the graveyard shift right down here by the viaduct, and then worked during the day at a different job and saved up. And I never went to a semester of school where I wasn't working a full-time job. And I remember something my mom always said. She always said, you'll never regret getting an education. You can always fall back on your education. But that's hard too, because at the moment you think, I could work these 2 jobs and bank money, and wow, look how lucky I am. I'm going to make, $7 an hour rather than $6 if I go full time. And so the instant reward is really tempting, but you have to kind of keep the future in mind.
The future in mind.
Yeah.
So out of your siblings, how many graduated from college?
6 out of 7.
That's impressive.
And multiple of them. My one brother was an orthopedic surgeon. My sister's nurse, paralegals, everyone's had really business owners, really productive careers. And like I said, it's almost to a fault because we're such go-getters that when we get together, it's just all business talk and what are you doing and what? Give me that tip and I'm going to implement that. And
Right.
there's a lot that goes on.
So, I think in this community, self-reliance is a big value.
is.
And, you mentioned that was something ingrained in your family from early on.
Yes.
Do you feel like that's something that's really influenced your life throughout your marriage and throughout your professional career?
Oh, absolutely. I've always, no matter what my husband's done, I've always contributed to the financial side of our marriage. Even when I had 5 little children and a set of twins and was pretty locked in at home for a couple years, I offered to babysit for my girlfriend who was trying to go back to work part-time, and just little odds ends jobs to help give money to help with the grocery bill, and just have a hard time not. I always tell my husband he really won the jackpot because I've never once made him feel like he has to be the sole provider. I've always let him know that I'm in this with him, and if he brings something to the table, I will try and match it, and it's been a really good way to raise our kids.
I think that mentality and that entrepreneurship spirit and so on is something that's very alive in the Valley here.
Yes, it really is.
And there's a lot of countries where that's how almost everybody is, because they have to be like that to survive.
you
but
have to, yeah.
in the U.S., sometimes that's something that's forgotten.
It is, and it's interesting with my husband and his profession, and we've never had a lot, but we've always had enough, and that for me is enough. There was just an article written on us about how I always tell my kids, you ate everything we could have ever put into savings, because they really did. But we did that knowing that was okay, because we wanted our home to be the home where there was always food and fun and everyone was welcome. But that doesn't come without a cost. It's expensive, but for us, that's where we wanted to put our money, was we wanted our home to be a welcoming environment. And so that comes with a lot of my husband and I running to the grocery store and making spaghetti at 11 at night for friends, and just really everyone's welcome at our home.
So tell us a little bit about your husband, because I think a lot of what we're going to be talking about is also, the culture
Exactly.
that, in the family, which is, of course, Polynesian.
Yes.
And, tell us a little bit about how you met and about him.
So he was, I always tell him, you're like every mother's worst nightmare, because when they send their daughters to college and your moms don't want you to ever meet anyone and get married until you have your degree, at least my mom didn't. So the rule was in our family, you could not get engaged until you were in your senior year of college.
Right.
And so some of my sisters obeyed that, some others didn't, but I was determined to. And I met Steve, when I was a freshman, he was a junior and had served a 2-year mission. So he was a little bit older. And we just dated off and on, and eventually dated a little more serious. And then he met my mom and realized, that she was really strict, more strict than, and he comes from a Tongan family, and the dads are pretty strict in those families, but my mom was tough. And he respected that, and he knew there was a line drawn in the sand, and that I was going to stay at BYU until I was into my senior year. And he's full Tongan and great, and carried a green card. He's the oldest son in his family, and if he were to get his his parents have their American citizenship, all his siblings do. He was the one that didn't, because he's the oldest son. So all the property in Tonga was under his name. So when I married him, he carried a green card, and up until our oldest son turned 18, he was not able to become an American citizen. So we ended up dating. He got drafted and went into the NFL. I stayed at BYU. I got into my senior semester and got the ultimatum from him that's either marry me or this is over. I'm so tired of being alone out here.
So tell us that story. Tell us that story.
It's a horrible story. No, it's not horrible. I was at BYU and loving it's really fun to be at BYU and date a cute boy that's not at BYU.
Right.
That he was on the other side of the country doing great things and working and flying you and your sister out to watch him play football on Sundays, because my mother would never let me go alone. So he had to pay 2 tickets when he wanted me to come watch him play, and he was just really willing to do that. And then once he knew that I was working, and I wasn't able to go through college as fast as most people because I had to work full time. So I would work every morning from 7 till 3, and then I would go to BYU from 3 till 7. And so he was really patient, but boy, when I hit that senior year, I got a phone call. And he said, you're in your senior year, right? I said, I am. I'm two months in. And he said, okay, great. I'm coming home to propose to you. And you're either going to accept this ring and marry me, or it's done. I'm so tired of being alone out here. And that was kind of what sealed the deal. So
Wow.
It worked great. We got married, and we went back to Philadelphia. We had our first 2 children back there. And just even when I was back there, I couldn't sit still, had to think of things to do, and got actively engaged in the NFL PA Wives Association, and just always have.
So what was that like? I mean, I'm sure that was a big change.
It was for me. In fact, I tell him he did me no favors by letting me marry him and jump into that lifestyle for 3 or 4 years, and then have to come back and hit reality because, but I'm super tight with my money, and and probably more so than him, I'll be really honest. Even though he came from a poor family as well, I'm definitely the tightwad in the family.
Right.
I watched the dime really close. So when we were back there, I remember getting pregnant, and he was saying, do you need maternity clothes? And I was like, I'm not wasting money on those things. And just really, and do we need a second car? No, we can share a car.
And this is while he's in the NFL?
In the NFL. We lived like we were college students. We didn't buy furniture. We finally one day I said, if I could just have a TV or anything. He laid out his lava. We slept on the floor in a 1-bedroom apartment. And then my mother was coming out to visit our new baby. And all of a sudden, a rental truck with rental furniture backed up to our apartment. And he had gone and rented furniture because I think he didn't want my mom to unload on him.
Right.
So that was our first experience having furniture. But we lived really poor when we were in the NFL on purpose.
So how many years did he do in the NFL?
So I think he was there. He was going into his 4th. He got released the Monday prior to his being vested. And he had 1 more game to play, and then he would have got full retirement.
It's funny
and
how that happens, right?
It's really, they do that all the time. It's a business.
Right.
And we knew that, and so we just enjoyed it while we were in it. And he's got that he's Polynesian and loves his family, and he's the oldest son, when that comes with a lot of responsibility. So he did things like paid for braces for siblings in college, sent his sister to Rick's college, and just did a lot of things like that, took care of his parents, paid off mission debts and things like that, which made him feel really good. I remember one time I was with my mom because, like I said, I watched every penny, and I was just crying to her saying, Mom, he just is giving money and taking care of bills for his family. And I'll never forget what she said. She said, knock it off. She said, he is out there on the field and beating his body up every day. And right now I was pregnant with Bronson, my second, and I couldn't work. And I had Alexis, who was just 1.5, and she said, knock it off. Don't you say a word. He's the one out there putting his body out there. You let him. This is his little time to shine for his family. It's his time to give back, so let him do it. And I was really surprised because I totally thought she would side with me, and she did not. She said, you get back to Philadelphia, you support him, and you just button your lip and don't say a word. Let him do what he needs to do. It was great advice. It really was a game changer.
So I think, your example of somebody living frugally, even when you're in that situation, is a big contrast to a lot of people in that environment.
And it really was back there. My girlfriends that were other football players' wives were shocked. Like, they could not believe we shared a Honda Civic, because they drove their fancy cars and had nannies, and I was the only wife that didn't have a nanny, that took both my kids to the games and sat with them inside if it was bad weather. And they didn't know what to think of me. It was unique.
Yeah. Have you seen over the years, families that were doing well, but then when their career ended, that they were really struggling after that?
And divorce, just rampage and spent driving. I used to always say, to Steve, everybody here either wears it or drives it. And when he'd always say, you gotta not say that, that's not very nice. But now that we're so removed from it, he's like, you were so right on. Because it's a fast lifestyle and everything is fast. But it's easy to get caught up in, and you can't. I mean, if you want to have anything to be able to fall back on later in life, you've got to plan for it. And yeah, my girlfriends would tease me and kind of joke with me, but I'll tell you what, I can only think of 2 that are still married.
Wow.
Out of my whole wives club that I had out there. It's really
so what are the things that you think as a family that you put first that helped you to have a better outcome in the marriage and just financially, and kind of because it really was kind of in some ways a stepping stone for you, because he went on to coach football after that.
He did. Like I said, we did it backwards. We got married and kind of landed into this lifestyle that was easier than anything I had ever lived and anything he had ever lived. And we were in that lifestyle for a few years, and then we jumped back to Provo, and he had to go back to college and finish his degree because he hadn't finished. And we now were pregnant with our 3rd, and it was a struggle. We went through a period of about 2 years where he was working the graveyard shift at UPS, and then he'd come home and sleep and tend the 2 kids while I'd go work at Wasatch Elementary School, and then he'd meet me in the parking lot. We'd switch kids again, and then he'd go to school. And so we really did take this little jaunt out of reality, but then within a few years we were right back in it and having to live that lifestyle. And then he applied for his master's degree and went up to the U for that. We moved up there and then got picked up and started his coaching career.
At that time, coming back, kind of getting back into, like you said, back to reality, that sort of thing.
It really was.
When you had that experience, was there a long-term vision of where you thought that you would end up, or where he thought that he would end up, or was it really kind of rediscovering a new path?
It wasn't really that different, because like I said, we never flew across country. We always packed up our little Honda Civic and drove across the country to save money. So it really wasn't that big of a stretch. It just really wasn't that different for us, even though we were able to do nice things for his family and take care of bring his mom and little brother out, do some things that we would never have been able to had he not had his football career. So, but we never kind of lost that vision. I remember telling him, by the time I'm 30, I want to be done having kids and I want to be in our first home. And that was kind of a goal, and I reminded him of it, which he probably hated now that I think back, but that was kind of a goal of mine. Was 30, I wanted to, and I got married a little bit late, so we had to have a lot of kids fast, and by the time we were 30, I was 33 or 34, we were moving into our first house. We were pretty close, but I definitely had some goals in mind of things and milestones where I wanted to be in life at different ages of life.
How many kids did you end up having total?
So 5 total, and we had a daughter, Alexis, and then Bronson, and then another son, Corbin, and then we got a surprise pregnancy of twins, a boy and a girl twin.
Oh, wow.
So our oldest was 6, turning 7, when 4 and 5 were home. So it was a lot of busyness, but I loved it. I loved being a mom. I loved being with my kids. And
so what kind of mom were you? Because I know you participated a lot, and your kids went through sports.
They did.
And, a lot of them very successfully, following in their dad's footsteps.
Well, I'm not a sports person, so everyone laughs because they
So you weren't the soccer mom?
No. My kids will tell you, they'll be like, we would look up in the stands, and my mom's side would be turned sideways, visiting with all the other moms, and the game was over. Oh, the game's over. Okay, let's go. For me, sports, but my husband, his opinion's different. For him, it was his launching point out of poverty. For him, it was his launching point in having the opportunity to get a higher education. There was no way he would have been able to attend Brigham University if he hadn't had sports. So to him, it's this huge game changer. And for my kids, he was definitely the sports side, and I was definitely the academic. I really pushed my kids on the academic side, and where my kids were, I was, and what they were engaged in, I was engaged in, and volunteered and followed them to school, and really any need that needed to be met in the classroom, I tried to fulfill it, and really hands-on, tried to be really available to them, and got to know all the teachers, which led into my next career. And so it really paid off well to get actively engaged.
So your first foray into politics was, I think, in the school district, right?
Exactly, yeah. So it was interesting. I had been involved since my kids were in preschool. When they started, I started helping, what are the needs? I'd ask the teacher, what are your needs? Oh, we need fundraising, we need this and that. And I constantly was like, okay, let me help you. And just kind of started down in the trenches. And I was the PTA president at all the schools. And when I was the PTA president at Timpview High School, I learned a lot about the breakdown in kind of, I call it the gray area. So there's the kids that are really well off, their families are real settled, and then there's there's a big gap, and then it goes into this lower population that come from a lower economic background, and I kept finding myself all the time when I was in the public school system volunteering, drawn to those kids. And I think it's because I was one of those kids. And so when I finally got to where I was PTA president, that was my focus, was we're going to help these kids in this gray area that maybe they are on free and reduced, but maybe they're embarrassed to be on free and reduced. They have access to having their fees waived, but they don't know how to utilize that and do the paperwork. Their parents don't. So that's kind of where my focus went. And something I focused on, my oldest daughter at the time was a junior, and she was preparing to go to university. And so we were getting her ready to take the ACT prep class. And I was looking all around town for an ACT prep class. And this was years ago. And the only one available was BYU. And it was, in my mind, super expensive. It was like $400, I think, or $375 plus the manual. And I, as a mom of 5 kids, and Steve, doing the best he could, I just remember stewing over, where am I going to find $400? But she has to have this, because if you want to fill out a college application, you have to plug in a number in that blank. And I just started to think of all the kids here at this high school who everyone thinks it's the upper echelon, but it's really not. There's a huge demographic that are not in that upper echelon. Mm-hmm. How are they ever going to get the opportunity to go to college if they can't fill in that blank? So I really focused on coming up with a way to do that. And I have a girlfriend that's a lawyer, and she helped me, and I told her my dream was to be able to offer an ACT prep class to all students, regardless of their economic background, their faith, what they looked like, where they came from. That didn't matter to me. I wanted everybody to have the opportunity. So I called the ACT program and got their curriculum, and I called the manual book people back in DC and said, this is my dream, I'm trying to do this, could you guys help? And it basically all kind of came together, and I got free ACT books. I started the ACT prep class at Timpview for free. Just amazing. I got the woman that wrote the curriculum for BYU's ACT class to share it with me. So me and some moms, I always gave the ACT prep test at the beginning by myself in the library. I gave it on Saturday morning, and then for the next 6 Saturdays we taught this curriculum, and then the 7th Saturday rolled right into the ACT test. So that was my first experience on really taking on
a project like that.
Yeah, and seeing great success come out of it.
What did that do for you? Because
it just inspired me that, you know what, there's hope. And and there was a point where we needed funding, and we had to go to community council and ask for some of their trust lands money to help fund the class. And I went to the Board of Education meeting and listened and watched those 7 board members, and I got up and said my name is Michelle Kaufusi, this is my address, I live in Provo, my kids attend, at the time we had Rock Canyon, Centennial, and Timpview, and this is why I'm here. And I gave my proposal, and I sat down, and I realized not a single one asked me a question, not a single one engaged in what I was doing. It was just fine, next person up. And so it was actually in that room that I became the board president in, where I decided, okay, I need to be one of those 7 members. I need to hold a vote. And that's kind of where the rubber hit the road. And I looked into it and found the person that was in my seat was well liked and doing a fine job, and to unseat an incumbent's really tricky when you have no money and no experience. But me and some girlfriends went to work. We were able to unseat her, and I won my first election, and within 2 years was the board president of public education and traveling to Beijing and helping the governor, sitting on different boards, and it just
So
snowballed.
clearly, in order to do that, you had a cause-driven campaign. It couldn't have been
Absolutely.
just personality-driven,
was-
because she was
no.
well-liked, right?
She was well liked and doing a great job. And
So what was your cause that you were
my
championing?
cause was to champion the children that didn't have a voice, the less represented. Every city council member was pretty, to run a campaign, you have to have some deep pockets usually.
Mhm.
And I didn't have that, and that was my cause. Was I'm doing this because I see a need for these children to be represented. And it was interesting. I just had to tell my story, and boom, people had huge buy-in, and I won and was able to have my first term and do great things, and then ran unopposed the second time. And I'm not a fan of long terms, so I knew that I kind of knew I wasn't going to run a third term, because 12 years is way too long. They need fresh ideas and fresh people. So two terms was it for me, and then
Since then you've sat on multiple boards.
Multiple
and
boards.
Kind of worked
through the
into
state, through education,
yeah.
through been able to travel all over and learn a lot, and
then the city of Provo is one of the most influential and largest cities in the state of Utah.
it is, and they have a strong mayor form of government, which is unique. There's only a handful of us in this whole state, and when the rumor was out that Congressman Curtis wasn't going to run again, I had multiple people say, "This is you need to do it." But I still had 2 years in my term, so I felt torn a little bit, because I never want to leave anything undone. So I just decided, okay, I'm going to go file, and I'm going to work really hard for 1 year and just give it everything I've got. And if I win, great. If I don't win, great. I still have another year on the Board of Education, and I'll do Plan B and look for somewhere else to serve. And worked really hard, and my whole family worked hard, and all my friends and everyone that believed in me, and we landed here. It was crazy. On November 7th, and Congressman Curtis won too, and it was a unique election for him, because Jason Chaffetz was done. And so for the outgoing mayor and the new incoming mayor to both win an election on the same night never happens. We both won. I was in this office the next morning. You usually get a 12-week kind of grace period to learn, and he was boxed up and out of here because he had a vote on the floor like in 48 hours.
It's the changing of the guards.
It was so great. I just remember sitting here asking him questions like, what are the 5 things you wish you hadn't done?
Yeah.
What are the 5 things that you're the most proud of? If you could change anything? Just these do or die questions, trying to just pick his brain. And
What would
day
you
I came to
say
work.
that his legacy was that he left?
Oh,
big shoes to fill, right?
Honestly, like I said earlier, anyone that runs for a public office and serves, I admire, because it is not easy. It is really hard to be vulnerable. Put yourself out there. Put your whole family out there for a whole year. You are a target. You wake up, you read the paper, and there is nothing in there that's truth that's come out of your mouth, but it's in black and white, so everyone thinks it is. And it's really hard to go up against that. But he was great, and all the mayors before have been wonderful people, and I really believe that all my predecessors, every person that's run for the mayor of Provo, I don't think they've run with I want the title, I want to be this big wig or whatnot, because Provo's not that way. You run in Provo because you want to serve. And John Curtis was great. He was just a great mentor, and still such a great friend. Being a congressman for us and our representative, I talk to him at least once a month, and we're at conventions together, and his wife and myself, she was on the school board for a year or 2 with me, so just a great relationship.
So jumping from school board to
Yeah.
mayor of a large city,
Yeah.
that's a big difference. And
It was.
Would you say that the cause that you champion evolved as you kind of
It evolved,
progressed?
but it still has. I still have those same grassroots of Provo. We can do better. We can offer more to these people that don't have as much. We can look out for them. And Provo we have so much to offer. but it's a unique demographic. I think people are sometimes kind of like how I was when I was a child, that everyone in Provo is happy and perfect. And everyone has a mom and a dad and lives in these big houses, and their life's perfect. And it wasn't then, and it isn't now. And to be the voice and to really listen to the whole city. So every decision I make, I know I'm making a decision not just for, my girlfriend that lives at the mouth of the canyon, but for my girlfriend that lives in an apartment over here in the Boulders, and to all my friends I went to Provo High School with that live all throughout the valley that I have to answer to. I take all of that into consideration, which is unique because most mayors don't get the opportunity to be born and raised and then serve their city later in life. So it's a really unique opportunity I'm having.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and it's, again, big. It can be intimidating. My dad ran for mayor when I was young.
Bless him.
And it was tough. He went against the person who won. Ended up staying in office for close to 17 years.
Oh, that's way too long. You need to come in. You need to do the best you can, and that's my goal. Like, give it all I've got. Do the best I can. Work really hard. But when I realize and feel like I've finished my projects and I'm done, it's time for someone with fresh ideas to come in.
Yeah. As you've kind of now gotten settled in your role as mayor and really, doing the day-to-day and working with all the different things that go on in a city like Provo, what do you enjoy the most about the role?
Well, my favorite part, I'm in here a lot, and it's I tell everyone this is not a job, it's a lifestyle. When you're the mayor, there's no hours on the clock. You are 24/7. No, absolutely not, which is really great. And I enjoy that, and I love working with the people of the city, but something that has surprised me just as much is the people that work in the city, that work for the city, that are in this office, and my police and fire and public works and energy and parks and rec. I have some of the best people I get to work with, and I feel really blessed every day. Not only do we have great citizens to interact with, but I get to work with the employees, and they're great people as well.
So you've already set some standards that that have never been done before. First female mayor.
I know. I keep telling them, you guys don't even know what to do with me.
Yeah. But if you were to leave office having accomplished something as a legacy, as a public servant, what would you want it to be?
That's such a great question. There's so many moving pieces right now, just in the first year of things we've been able to accomplish, from settling lawsuits to saving the ice rink before it went up for sale, to solving the parking problem in downtown Provo, to passing a bond in my first year to build 2 fire stations, a new police station, and a new city hall. Things like that, when I called multiple senators and legislatures and said, I'm thinking of running a bond, and I haven't even been in a year, and every single one of them said, it'll be political suicide, don't do it. And I said, how do I say no to the citizens of Provo and my employees when the need is so great? And they said, well, then don't plan on ever holding a political seat again. And I remember I came in here and sat on that couch and just felt horrible, felt sorry for myself, and thought, I like this career. This is my 10th year and my 3rd seat, and I'm loving it. But you know what? It was the right thing to do. So I just said, I'm swinging for the fences. I don't care if I ever win an election again. I'm going to go out with these city workers knowing that I did the right thing for them. And it was huge, and I passed a $69 million bond. So that meeting prior to this was a 4-hour meeting on what it's going to look like. So things like that. Another piece, when you run for political office, you do a lot of research. And I was able to study our water reclamation system, our sewer system, and it's breaking. And you're the best mayor until everyone's sewer's up in their house, and then you're the worst mayor. So we're getting a new sewer system. I went and fought for money with the state and with the federal government, and so we've got some huge projects. No mayor ever does city hall, 2 fire, 1 police, and a sewer system at the same time. But it's a need. It's not a want. And I've raised my family on that. I was raised on that. Every single thing. Do I need this or do I want this? And if it's a want, forget it. But if it's a need, you address it. And I think that's kind of the legacy I hope to leave, is that I'm really tight with money, but I like to have fun, I like to work hard, and I know the difference between needs and wants. And I'll work hard for the needs, not so much for the wants.
Right. So as a mother,
Yeah.
and in your family, clearly there were specific things that you remember from your mom that influenced you throughout your path.
Yeah.
What would you want your kids to take away as your legacy?
It's interesting. They've had to do some interviews and things like that, and with their careers, the cities they're working in have called and told me, done interviews on, because it's kind of unique to have their mom be the first female mayor of their city, and they're out working in New York playing for the Jets, or for the New Orleans. I just did an interview with the New Orleans Saints because Corbin left this morning to go out there to play, and they're just in awe that we have such a huge family, and that my husband works and that I'm the mayor. I mean, it just throws them for a loop. And I always ask the reporters, I say, what have my kids said about me? And every time they say that you're a hard worker, that you get stuff done and you don't mess around. And it's definitely what I got from my mom, is, you know what, if there's a job, you jump in and do it, no matter how gritty and ugly it is, and you work until it's done. And they definitely see that in their mom, that's for sure.
That's great. So as a community, there are certain values that kind of are threaded in the community already,
Yes.
and maybe some that you can have a hand in shaping.
Yeah.
What would you say are the most important things that a community needs to have to be successful?
Well, something that this community has, and those that don't have, we're trying to let them know that every person counts in this city, and that we care about you, and we want to help you succeed. And what does success mean to you? Does it mean having enough money to take the bus system to get to your employment? If that's where you're at, I love it. Let me help you. Or if it means being able to do your startup business here in Provo, fantastic. Bring it to me and let me help you. That's something I'm really trying to push in the city, is I don't care where you're at, because guess what? I've been everywhere. That's the unique thing. I've lived so poor, like so poor. And then I've lived at the other end for a few years, and now I feel like I'm just kind of mediocre, which is a great place to be. And but my heart, I've lived it, I understand it, and that's, I think, where I connect with the citizens like the most, is they can relate, I can relate to them, they can relate to me.
Awesome. Well, anything else you want to add before we wrap up?
My goodness, you've asked such great questions, so thank you. No, it's just been great. One question, people say, what's the best part about the job? And I tell them the best part is no 2 days are alike. I come in here and I get an agenda on my desk when I come in to work at 7. There can be something go in the city, and that agenda goes out the door, and I have yet to have 2 days that are even similar. It's really great that way.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for taking some time with us.
You're welcome.
We definitely think that not only is your story valuable, I think it's inspiring.
Oh, thanks.
But yeah, we're excited to see where it goes from here.
I know. Already people are like, what's your next big thing, Mayor? And I think it's been a year and maybe a few months, and I've done like so many things that now everyone's expectation is high, and I'm like, let me get these 5 things that I've started done, and then we'll come up with something great to just knock the socks off of everyone.
Right.